President Marcos has signed into law a measure postponing the Barangay and Sangguniang Kabataan elections this December and moving the schedule to October of next year.
Though the COMELEC says it respects the president's decision, poll watchdogs continue to oppose the matter, saying it violates Filipinos' rights to suffrage. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro with the big story.
Manuel Luna has been serving as chairman of Barangay 709 in Manila for 23 years. Luna says that his position allowed him to help residents during the pandemic, hand out gadgets needed by students for online learning, and also conduct a cleanup drive for their creeks. Now, after years of hard work and service, Luna says he's more than ready to retire.
Kapagod na rin ako. Handa na ako.
But it looks like Luna will have to serve for another year before retiring. That's due to the postponement of the Barangay and SK elections that were supposed to be held this December. The president has signed Republic Act 11935, which reschedules this year's election to October 30, 2023, and will be held again every 3 years after that. The last Barangay and SK elections were conducted in 2018, but these were delayed 4 times since 2016. Lawmakers explained the funds for this year's election could be reallocated for pandemic response. But the COMELEC has already clarified that even if the elections get delayed, the funds can no longer be transferred to other agencies, as the poll body has fiscal autonomy. Some election watchdogs also oppose the measure. For Attorney Ona Caritos of the Legal Network for Truthful Elections, this move does not recognize the importance of regularly electing barangay and SK officials.
Kung meron tayong gobyerno na nararamdaman sa pang-araw-araw nating buhay, yan yung ating barangay at SK officials. Kapag may problema tayo sa basura, may problema tayo sa kapitbahay natin.
Caritos says it's important for the elections to push through so that voters can kick out non-performing barangay officials. She adds that some officials are already getting too old for their jobs.
Naramdaman natin ngayong pandemic na hindi talaga sila nag-deliver at hindi nila nagampanan yung kanilang mga dapat gampanin, ay nabigyan pa ng pagkakataon na mapatagal at mapalawig yung kanilang termino.
The COMELEC says it will comply with the measure, saying they respect the government's prerogative. The poll body has started printing out ballots this September, but they assure the public that their preparations will not go to waste.
All of these are accounted for, and a simple resolution by the Commission and Bank will allow and authorize its use for the 2023 elections.
Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
And to discuss this further, we have with us on the show COMELEC Chairman George Garcia. He joins us live via Zoom. Welcome, sir, to the big story.
Good evening, Sir Ed, and good evening, Ma'am.
Gretchen po.
Ma'am Gretchen, yes. Good evening, and good evening to all the televiewers.
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining us tonight. Sir, let me break it down to the brass tacks. Kasi ang sabi ng Congress, they want to move nga the elections so that they can use the money for pandemic-related matters. Pero in one of our interviews previously, sabi niyo rin, they can't just do that. They can't just reallocate the budget of COMELEC for something else because you have fiscal autonomy. So I suppose that in itself already disputes yung logic behind it. Now I know you have to follow the law. Pero
Yes, sir.
Pero is there any way that COMELEC can still use this money, or will it be taken out by the executive?
Well, actually, Sir Ed, as far as the COMELEC is concerned, and as contained likewise in the law assigned by the President and passed by Congress, there was actually a provision for a continuing appropriation of said amount, meaning to say that the amount that is in the possession of the Commission on Election, which is 8.441 billion pesos intended for the December 5, 2022 election, will have to remain with the Commission on Election as part of the continuing nature of this budget. So meaning whatever is left to the 8.441 billion after the end of the year will have to stay with the Commission on Election and will form part of the budget of the COMELEC in the reset election of October 2023. And therefore, whatever is the balance, or will the COMELEC be needing for as additional budget, then 8.441 billion plus the additional budget that the COMELEC will be needing. And therefore, it cannot be, again, realigned reassigned to any other budget or any other project or activity outside of barangay and SK elections.
So, sir, does that mean the funds cannot be used for pandemic recovery efforts? And you also mentioned that if we postpone the elections, we'll be spending 10 billion more. Paano niyo po nakuha yung amount na po yun?
You are correct on the first matter that you mentioned. Indeed, definitely po, it cannot be used for any pandemic response or any other concern or even an emergency, because this is really intended for the barangay and SK elections. Now, how are we able to compute that additional 10 billion pesos? Our projection and estimate, ma'am, is that we will be able to register new voters by at least 5 to 7 million. 5 to 7 million voters divided by 400 voters per precinct, more or less, ma'am, you will be having additional 39,000 precincts. 39,000 precincts times 3, the number of teachers per precinct, times the number of the honoraria to be received by the chairperson, which is 10,000, and 9,000 for the secretary and the member. And then you will have additional ballot boxes, additional indelible ink, additional pen, additional printing of the ballots, definitely, and you will arrive at more or less 10 billion pesos addition.
Sir, let me just see if I'm reading this right, or if I'm getting this right. So what we're saying is, in other words, we are spending 10 billion pesos more to move these elections for actually no good reason. Kasi nga hindi rin naman realign for pandemic response as planned or as proposed by some people. So in effect, we're spending 10 billion pesos more than we should, for no reason.
What is clear, Sir Ed, is that we will be spending more amount of money in view of the postponement. As to whatever is the reason, basta po, as far as the COMELEC is concerned, definitely there will be additional expenditure and there will be additional allocation of budget for purposes of a reset election. And the people should understand that we need additional budget because of the increased number of voters and because of the increased operational costs that will be needed for the resetting of the election.
Okay, sir, taking a look at the reasons for the postponement, taking away the financial part of it, one of the things that were said was this postponement is good for reforms, changing the terms of the barangay officials and SK officials from 3 to 6 years. Are you for this? And what would be the difference? Why are our legislators pushing for this?
Of course, as far as the COMELEC is concerned, we are really for the regularity of the election because that is our job, that is our business, that is our duty in accordance with the Constitution to conduct the election. But we have to come to the reality that under the Constitution, it is just our mandate to implement the law, to administer the law. And the wisdom as to what should be the law belongs to the executive department and the legislative department of our government. The COMELEC cannot question the propriety, the wisdom, the discretion of such an exercise. And so if somebody, for example, a taxpayer or an interest group or a citizen's arm would like to really question why the election was postponed or the reason for such a postponement other than what was officially announced, then anybody can now question before the Supreme Court the constitutionality or legality of such a law. But as far as the COMELEC is concerned, we will have to respect and bow to the exercise of such discretion.
Well, sir, we've talked about this before in the other program. Pero what does this say about how we look at the barangay and the importance of the barangay? I mean, it is the smallest political unit in the country, and some would say that it's probably the more important or the most important political unit, given the fact na ito yung nakasawsaw talaga sa taong bayan. Yet we keep on, well, not the COMELEC, pero we've been postponing it for how many times? 3 times already? 4 times?
4 times.
What does this say about how Filipinos and Filipino politicians view the barangay as a political unit?
I would like to agree sa argument niyo, Sir Ed, and sa reasoning niyo, Sir Ed. Of course, as a private citizen, that should also be, and my sentiment should also be like that, and also as a former practitioner. But of course, officially, as the chairman of the Commission on Election, of course, my position was, as I earlier mentioned, was that we will bow to the discretion of Congress. But come to think of it, saan po ba nagsimula itong problem na ito, itong scenario that we are in right now? Perhaps a reading of the Constitution under Article 10, Section 8 would reveal the fact that it says that the term of office of local officials shall be 3 years except barangay officials. So, ang sabi po, ang term of office is 3 years except barangay officials. Does it mean, therefore, that our political departments can really reset the election? Is the resetting of the election similar as the fixing of the term? So, I think po, Sir Ed, Ma'am Gretchen, that is a legal issue which can be rightfully elevated to the courts so that at least from now on, in the event that the courts will be, or the Supreme Court will be giving a proper direction, that will be now the basis in the future of whether to postpone or not to postpone an election. Kaya po maganda rin talaga na madala po sa Korte Supremo upang once and for all, makapag-interpret ang Supreme Court, ano po ba talaga? Talaga bang pwedeng i-reset ang isang barangay and SK election, which will result in the extension of the term of barangay or even SK officials.
So you're saying only the court can temper Congress's proclivity for resetting or postponing the barangay elections?
So Ed, we call that the separation of power and the system of check and balances, which is included and deeply provided in our Constitution. In order to, sabi nga ng ni Justice Laurel in several cases, Jose P. Laurel, sabi niya, in order to prevent the overflow of powers from one territory to another territory, in order to check and counter-check the exercise of power of one department as against the other department of government.
Okay, maraming salamat po, COMELEC Chairman George Garcia. Thank you for joining us tonight.